Thank you. You're far too kind. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you chose to be here with me and I truly appreciate it. This is CNN Reports and I'm your host on Sanity. On today's show we explore the origin story of Pistol Pete Rollack, his sex money murder blood gang, the murder of New York street ball legend / drug dealer Karlton Hines, and finally the murder of SMM member David Twin Mullins on the orders of Pistol Pete. Pistol Pete was born in 1974 to Leonard Petey Rollack and his wife Brenda. In 1977, Pete's father was arrested along with drug kingpins Nicky Barnes and Guy Fisher when his son was around 3 years old. After his release from prison, the elder Rollack would hit the streets again. On October 27, 1987, the elder Rollack was indicted for the murder of Norman Bannister and criminal conspiracy charges. Rollack and 6 other defendants were charged with conspiring to distribute heroin throughout Manhattan and the Bronx, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Boston, and Washington, D.C. from January 1, 1980, to October 31, 1987, as members of a heroin ring headed by James Jackson, who, ironically, agreed to cooperate with the government and acted as the chief witness for the prosecution. While awaiting trial, Rollack himself stated on a recording made by a wired prison informant that he'd made $30,000 profit per week from drug sales. After being educated in the Catholic school system for most of his childhood, Rollack's son attended Soundview's Adlai Stevenson High School in his teens. In 1986, Pete met Sean "Shug" Stokes while playing together on a youth football team. Shug got his nickname and put onto the game by an older, more established drug dealer named Baby J. Shug was the first to bring Pete to Soundview projects and introduce him to people because Pete lived with his family in a house in the neighborhood. Shug didn't start off a gangster, but he wouldn't back down from a fight. David Twin Mullins, from the nearby Castle Hills projects, moved more militant like Pete. Neither drank or smoked. Pistol Pete and Twin just liked sex, money and murder. One of Shug's big homies from Soundview was a guy named Fat Mike. Fat Mike was a part of Lester's crew in getting money on the Cozy Corner intersection between Rosedale Avenue and Randale Avenue. It was a dangerous corner that once housed a nightclub named Cozy Corner in the 1970s. The year 1987 marked the year that Pistol Pete began to go outside for real. He began to recruit a group of friends from the Soundview and Castle Hill projects to form a gang that would eventually become known to the world as Sex Money Murder. Due to the reputation of Pete's father, his popularity among his peers, and propensity for violence, he was the de facto leader. Fat Mike kept money in the little homies' pockets to help the OGs hold shit down for his boss Lester on Cozy Corner until his murder, as a result of a triple homicide by rival drug dealers from the Sackwarn houses, known as Leary's Crew, in January 1988. After the triple homicide, Fat Mike's boss Lester temporarily left town to avoid getting hit next. Leary got low due to cooperation of a government witness in the homicide investigation, leaving Cozy Corner open to Pete and his young gunners. What happened next was inevitable. The OGs came back home wanting to claim their old corners, and the coming-of-age war left Pistol Pete and his crew as the new kings of Castle Hill and Soundview. Keep in mind that Pete was one of the older boys and was around 14 or 15 years old in the years 1988 and 89, fighting a drug war against grown men. At the age of 17, Pete moved in with his father's friend George Wallace, calling him his uncle. Wallace continued Pete's education in the drug game, grooming him to become a gang leader. In 1992, Pete was talking to his cousin from California who was a Crip. Pete's cousin explained that gangs on the West Coast were more organized while crews like Pete were just interested in sex, money and murder. Now that Pete had found the perfect name for his crew, it was time to organize and expand from dope boys holding shit down on Cozy Corner to a notorious criminal enterprise. Pistol Pete and Dave Twin Mullins were classmates, but some of the original SMM members were even younger than them. Emilio led Pipe Romero, or just Pipe, was 3 years younger and just 11 years old when he first fired shots for his team during the coming-of-age war. Pistol Pete's surrogate uncle George Wallace provided his young nephew with product and Pete's crew ruled over Cozy Corner. During that time though, New York dealers like Pete learned it was often more profitable to earn money out of town. Pete and his partners started getting their money up in Pittsburgh, but how much is unknown and often exaggerated, like Pistol Pete's estimated body count of 30 homicides. In April 1993, Pete was sentenced to a month in jail for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. On August 16, 1993, before his 19th birthday, Pistol Pete dropped his first body. Pete was known for carrying 2 guns on him at all times, frequently busting them, and often hitting his target during the coming-of-age war, but the only SMM member that actually killed someone at that time was B-Mo, from Castle Hill's projects. In August 1993, Pete's other partner from Castle Hill, Twin, got into an argument while gambling with a nigga unarmed. Pistol Pete killed Kenyon Jenkins, showing loyalty to his homie Twin without hesitation. In an attempt to legitimize his operations, Pistol Pete established a corporation under the name SMMC Incorporated. The company was used to lease a fleet of luxury cars from a company out in Pittsburgh called Three Rivers Auto. Through SMMC Incorporated, members were able to obtain cars via prepaid leases that bypassed background and credit checks, so they were essentially able to drop a stack of cash and drive a new car off the lot. In addition, the company made it so outright purchases of vehicles by SMM members were concealed through forged paperwork in order to make the purchased cars seem as though they were simply leased. This provided fellow members with a vast variety of cars that each came equipped with their own stash boxes used to conceal cash, drugs and toasters. Many of the vehicles that were purchased and leased were MPVs and minivans, as they were the vehicles of choice for hits. The company was also utilized to launder money for the gang. Pistol Pete was reportedly a millionaire by the age of 19. On March 9, 1994, Pete reportedly attempted to murder Domingo Osorio. His next known hit, though, is the one that made young Pistol Pete a legend. Less than a month after an attempted murder, Pete killed basketball star and drug-dealing street superstar Karlton Hines on April 9. If anyone is familiar with Hassan Campbell, then you know he is a Bronx River resident with ties to Africa Bombada's Zulu Nation. We're not getting into all of his allegations of sexual abuse against Bam in this video. We mention it to point out the fact that one of Hassan's big homies was named B.O. B.O. is a Bronx street legend that represented Cortlandt Avenue. Let's listen to Hassan tell us how his big homie got down.
When Bam got on, even though Bam had Planet Rock, he only really had one hit. He had the music industry on lock. B.O. had the music industry on lock behind the scenes, extorting mad rappers, extorting mad gangsters. He was in everybody's pocket.
Carlton Hines also represented Cortlandt Avenue and was nicknamed C-Town because of it. Hines just wasn't a local legend. He was known throughout the 5 boroughs of New York as Carlton Duncan Hines because of his skills on the basketball court. He was offered a scholarship to play at Syracuse, but he dropped out of high school 4 months before he was scheduled to graduate. This isn't a story, but we must report on the fact that Carlton got into a physical altercation when he returned to the projects with another man from Bronx River and accidentally killed him by slashing him across his neck with a broken bottle. Carlton spent a month in jail before prosecutors determined that it was a case of self-defense and released him. Nevertheless, Carlton's hoop dreams were derailed and he hit the streets hard. Hit the like button for more content. It's free for you and a big help to an up-and-coming network like ours. Now, let's listen to hip-hop mogul Dame Dash describe a man that attended the same high school he did.
Every time he was banging on somebody and pop this shit, you know what I mean? He just had a whole gym. But I never stayed in the game, he just consistently had different furs. You know, he always had so much money in the
Alright, let me begin to put this all together for everyone watching. Hassan Campbell's big homie B.O. was extorting everybody walking the streets of New York and was connected to figures in hip-hop through his association with the Zulu Nation. B.O. didn't just provide protection for early hip-hop artists. B.O. robbed, extorted, and in some cases protected drug dealers. B.O. was extorting the main drug supplier for SMM named Castro. Castro put a $50,000 bounty on B.O.'s head. The young gunners from SMM were eager to collect the cash, including Pete's homie from their days playing youth football together, Suge, despite the fact that B.O. looked out for Suge when he was younger. It was widely known that Carlton Hines was under the protection of B.O. and the entire Cortlandt Avenue crew. Pete and his team see Carlton and his guys at a club. Pete approaches him and asks what's up? As a sign of peace. Carlton knew that Pete was a street nigga that couldn't be trusted, so Carlton just looked at him and asked, "Who the fuck are you?" Of course, Pete punched him in the face and a huge brawl ensued. After that incident, SMM was on the hunt for both B.O. and Karlton. Pistol Pete caught Karlton slipping on April 9, 1994. This killing lifted Pete to legendary status, making him both feared and respected throughout the entire city of New York. Like most street legends that saw Eazy-E clean up his dope money through the rap game, Pistol Pete dreamed of becoming the next Suge Knight. He began to develop celebrity friendships. Pete discussed starting a record label with his friend, polo model Tyson Beckford. On one occasion, Pete had to convince B-Mo not to rob Biggie Smalls of his Rolex because Biggie was Pete's friend. He later had a meeting with Puffy to discuss the signing of Bronx rappers Lord Tariq and Peter Gunz. On another occasion, Pete's young homie Pipe busted a bottle over Nas' head when he felt disrespected by the rapper. Nas refused to identify Pipe as the man who hit him because he knew the codes of the street. We'll listen to Lord Tariq sing Pete's praises and then we'll discuss the events that led to the murder of SMM member Twin on the orders of his gang's leader.
There was a time over here where niggas was killing each other because there was no competition. Nobody couldn't fuck with niggas from this area, you know what I'm saying? So by that happening, it brought niggas in this area together, you know what I'm saying? Now my sister could walk in the building and they ain't gotta worry about gunshots flying over their head. I don't have no choice but to respect it.
In June of '94, Pete killed Anthony Dunkley during his quest to eliminate all local drug dealers in the area. On July 17, Pete finished the job on Carlos Mester, who was friends with Karlton Hines and injured when Pete killed him. Another member of SMM named Savan Yaro Packard was about more money than murder. He paid Pete to accompany him for protection on his drug trips to Pittsburgh. Things were working out well for Yaro Pack and Pete in Pittsburgh. Pete would often bring his little homie Pipe for company and extra security. B-Mo was always on the road somewhere hustling. Pete's homie Suge was doing his thing as well. SMM was blowing up. Sometime in 1994, Yaro Pack met David TV Dave Gonzalez. TV Dave proposed expanding the gang's drug business to North Carolina during a meeting with Pete and Yaro Pack, believing there was a tremendous amount of money to be made out there. After agreeing, Pete made multiple trips down to North Carolina and transported several keys to Lumberton and Rockingham. The three scoped out the Carolinas in search of real estate to be used as trap houses, all while eliminating all local competition that stood in their way. On their way back to NY, they left their minivan at an airport with 2 keys of coke and $70,000 in cash in one of its stash boxes before taking a flight back to NY. On August 18th, members of SMM became suspicious when a man named Tony Morton began driving by them slowly in his tinted window car. This prompted the SMM members to retrieve the guns they had stashed in nearby apartments. When they returned, the members spotted the car once more cruising through their hood. The SMM members approached the vehicle and pulled Morton and his passenger out at gunpoint. SMM member Sean Nut Carr proceeded to ride up on his bike and gun down Tony Morton. Afterwards, Pete made another trip down to the Carolinas with Yaro Pack, TV Dave and Pipe transporting 10 keys of coke. On the way to the Carolinas, the group passed through Pittsburgh to distribute 6 keys. They then made their way to the Carolinas to distribute more keys and collect debts. On October 20th, the group drove to Rockingham, North Carolina to meet up with Darius Covington. Covington, who had owed Pete and his crew $80,000 for coke he got on consignment, told Pete that he didn't have all of the money at the moment. Upon hearing this, Pistol Pete planned to smoke him. Pete told Pipe, Yaro Pack, and TV Dave that no one in this world could stay alive and owe him money while tapping his gun on his own forehead. However, TV Dave convinced Pete to give Covington one more day to get the money together, stating it's hard to get money out of a dead man. That night, Pistol Pete, Pipe, TV Dave, and Yaro Pack traveled to Charlotte in order to attend a concert, with 2 remaining kilograms of cocaine. Following the concert, Pipe was dropped off in Lumberton, North Carolina, and the remaining 3 drove to Wilmington, North Carolina in order to distribute more drugs. The next day, Pete, Yaro Pack and TV Dave drove the van to meet Covington at a Burger King in Rockingham. Unbeknownst to Pistol Pete, TV Dave called Covington prior to the meet and warned him of Pete's plans to kill him. Unbeknownst to Pete, Yaro Pack, and TV Dave, Covington, who couldn't afford to settle the debt and failed to show up for the meet, had acted as a confidential informant for years and had alerted police the night before and revealed that the van would contain illegal contraband. Pete, ignoring TV Dave's attempts to persuade him to leave, suggested driving to Covington's home and murdering his wife and children. The three were confronted by law enforcement while still in the parking lot of Burger King and asked if a search could be conducted on the van. Yarrow Pack gave police the keys and signed a vehicle search consent form. Police searched the vehicle but failed to find anything. Unconvinced, they requested the drug detection dogs, who immediately picked up the scent of coke in the van, prompting the officer to call up a tow truck to get the van towed to a police garage, where they enlisted the help of a mechanic to assist in tearing the car apart piece by piece. After doing so, they discovered 2 stash boxes, each with nothing in it. Unfortunately for them, the empty stash boxes gave police grounds to seize the vehicle. The SMM members were all taken down to the police station to verify their names. Pete, Yarrow Pack, and TV Dave showed them fake IDs which each had their fake names on them, and the officers were forced to let them go, but their van was impounded. With the pressure gradually being applied on them, Yarrow Pack suggested going to Charlotte, where they can catch a flight back to NY. Yarrow Pack and TV Dave were afraid that the police would find the last stash box, which had guns, drugs, and a large amount of cash in it. However, Pistol Pete was not going for it. He wanted his van, with all the drugs, guns and $250,000 in cash that were stashed in it, returned back to him. Yarrow Pack remained firm, but still Pete wasn't trying to hear it. He felt as though the police out there were a bunch of cider-squeezing hillbillies that wouldn't be able to find the last stash box. As the two argued about their decisions, police had already found the hidden stash box with all the contraband in it. Shortly before being arrested by the police, who took them to jail on high bail, Pete called the SMM members in New York to let them know what was going on. The trio ended up bonding out of jail several days later with the help of Yarrow Pack's cousin and Pete's father's friend, SMM member George Wallace, who Pete considered an uncle. Pete was pissed about the way things went down in North Carolina. He got arrested, police confiscated drugs and a large amount of cash. Plus, Darius Covington still owed him money. A short time later, Pistol Pete, Pipe, and Twin went to Club Sweetwater in New York. A rival drug dealer named Frisky was at the club. Frisky had a business relationship with Darius Covington in North Carolina before Pistol Pete. He didn't like the idea of SMM members stepping into his territory, so he allegedly paid hitmen in North Carolina to kill Pete. Pete, Pipe, and Twin initially greeted Frisky like they were still friends. The SMM members were all smiles as they rocked Frisky to sleep. They even sent a bottle of champagne to his table. Eventually, the three men surrounded Frisky and Twin shot him dead. SMM still had beef with B.O. though. There was still a bounty on B.O.'s head. B.O. was spotted outside a club one night and narrowly avoided death when Pete chased after him. The next time that B.O. was spotted, an SMM member called Pete and Twin, informing them that B.O. was in the Castle Hills projects. Pete and Twin both raced to the scene. Twin arrived first, killed B.O., and made his escape. Here's an interesting fact: hip-hop artist Showbiz from the group Showbiz and AG, and the legendary Digging in the Crates crew from the 1990s that included Fat Joe, was initially arrested for the murder of B.O. He was hanging out with B.O. and standing next to him when Twin smoked him. On August 9, 1995, Pistol Pete was apprehended for the murder of Karlton Hines based off of a tip that was given to the police by TV Dave, who had been informing on Pete, after Pete had pressed him on the money that Darius Covington owed. Since he was in possession of a gun at the time, Pete was also hit with a gun charge which carried a mandatory 8-month sentence. During this time, Pistol Pete was approached by Omar OG Mac Porty and Leonard Deadeye McKenzie, who wanted Pete to join their ranks and become a member of the Bloods. They felt as though the SMM crew was the type of hardbody, cutthroat, murderous gang that was needed to solidify the strength and reputation of the Bloods. Pete refused because his reputation on the street far exceeded Omar's reputation on the street, but the Bloods were beginning to take over Rikers Island, and West Coast gang culture had begun to spread on the streets of NY. OG Mac approached Pete again with a better deal. He offered Pete his own set to independently run under the red flag of the United Blood Nation, or UBN. This time Pete agreed and embraced his gang affiliation wholeheartedly. He sent letters to SMM members in the projects from jail coded in blood language, running his set from jail as the Godfather. He put out a hit on TV Dave and Yarrow Pack for snitching. but they weren't the only ones snitching on Pete about the murder of Karlton Hines. Twin sister had identified Pete during an interrogation. She later recanted her story after Twin threatened to kill her. The police chose not to prosecute Pete for murder without twin sister's cooperation, so after serving 8 months in jail on the gun charge, Pete's mom bailed him out of Rikers Island. Pete painted the Soundview projects red for 2 weeks, initiating the new generation of young SMM members into the Bloods until he was picked up on charges stemming from his trips to North Carolina. Pistol Pete will never walk the streets as a free man ever again in this lifetime. His story is one of blood, loyalty and betrayal. Did Twin sister really recant because Twin threatened to kill her, or was that the story that Twin wanted the hood and SMM members to believe because snitches get stitches and he was now the de facto leader of the team? We'll explore these issues and more when we discuss the fall of Pistol Pete and the original Sex Money Murder crew.